Insiders are revealing to me the true story of how Meghan Markle failed.
It's like, where is the mic? Where is the mic? At one point she yelled, give me a mic, and they didn't give it to her.
Woof. Something felt off the second it happened, and everyone in that room noticed it at the same time. There's a split second where everything changes, where a perfectly controlled moment starts to fall apart right in front of them. Prince Harry stood on stage, calm and composed, delivering a speech that sounded carefully prepared down to every word. "Hi, everybody." His voice steady, posture confident, every eye locked on him. The atmosphere felt serious, almost rigid, the kind of event where nothing ever goes off script. Everything was running exactly how it should, and then it wasn't. Out of nowhere, Meghan Markle walked straight onto the stage.
How's everybody?
This guy with the purple jacket is trying to block her from going on stage.
No introduction, no cue, no signal from anyone running the event, just a surprise entrance that made people sit up straight in their seats. Conversations cut off mid-sentence, heads snapped toward the stage, and the entire room went quiet in a split second. You could feel the tension building as people realized they might be watching something uncomfortable play out live. Moments like that don't usually get talked about, especially when it involves two high-profile figures standing side by side in front of a crowd. For years, people noticed the same pattern again and again. Harry would subtly step back while Meghan took control of the spotlight and did the talking. It became predictable. Even interactions had that slightly awkward vibe, like someone saying, "Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty," like, "Was that okay?"
And she goes around him, she even ignores him.
Wow.
She ignores the guy.
Again, I have to be careful what I say.
But this time, that pattern cracked wide open. Instead of that smooth, practiced rhythm, something felt completely different. Meghan looked ready to take center stage again, but the reaction she seemed to expect just didn't happen. No applause, no cheers, not even polite clapping. Just a heavy, uncomfortable silence hanging over the room. And that silence, it was only the start. What unfolded on that stage triggered whispers, side eyes, and quiet conversations that didn't stop when the event ended. People close to the situation started hinting at tension, image concerns, and behind-the-scenes strain that nobody wanted to openly address. If that silence in the room felt uncomfortable, what people said afterward hit even harder. Conversations quickly turned intense, with observers asking one big question: was this the first real crack in an image that always looked perfectly controlled?
Now, Harry has full control of the mic. When Meghan walked on stage, she could have said, "Oh, here's my wife," and hand over the microphone. Did he do it? No.
Prince Harry was still in the middle of his speech, voice calm and measured, sticking to his script like nothing had changed. Then Meghan stepped forward with confident energy, instantly pulling attention her way. But instead of admiration, the crowd reacted with pure confusion. The room didn't warm up. It froze. Even Harry seemed caught off guard for a split second, his eyes narrowing slightly as he tried to process what was happening. Meghan placed her hand on his back, a move people had seen before, usually the signal that Harry would step aside and pass the microphone without hesitation. But not this time. Harry didn't budge. His grip on the microphone tightened, his shoulders squared up, and instead of stepping aside like expected, he kept talking like nothing was going to interrupt him.
This guy right behind Harry, the same guy that rejected to give her the mic last year, or is looking at her and he doesn't care.
What?
That small act, easy to miss if you blinked, hit the room with real force. It wasn't just hesitation, it felt like resistance. And just like that, the energy shifted under those bright lights and cameras. What should have looked smooth and united suddenly felt tense, almost uncomfortable, like the audience was watching a disagreement unfold without a single word being said. Meghan held a fixed smile, her hand lingering on his back just a little longer, long enough to show she wasn't stepping away yet. But Harry stayed locked in, eyes forward, fully focused, refusing to break his flow. In that brief moment, something clearly felt different. The balance between them seemed to tilt right there on stage, and the audience picked up on it instantly. Yet instead of applause or even polite reactions, there was nothing. No clapping, no cheers, not even a soft murmur. Just thick, heavy silence filling the room. Meghan remained beside him, smiling tightly, waiting for a reaction that simply never came.
Like, I curtsied as though I was like, "Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty." Like, was that okay?
It's really quite sad.
Seconds dragged on painfully, each one heavier than the last. The pause didn't just linger, it stretched out until it felt endless. The silence in the room grew so intense it almost sounded louder than noise itself. Harry kept speaking, voice steady and controlled, like he was fully committed to pushing forward and not acknowledging the awkward moment happening right beside him. Meghan stayed there in the spotlight, clearly waiting for some kind of reaction, a nod, a cheer, even one person breaking the silence. But nothing came. The crowd didn't respond with anger or disapproval. Honestly, it felt worse than that. They stayed completely neutral, just watching without giving the moment any energy at all. No movement, no sound, just stillness that made everything feel even more uncomfortable. And in a formal setting like that, that kind of cold indifference hits hard. Finally, with no reaction to hold on to, Meghan shifted slightly. She glanced toward Harry, then slowly stepped back toward the side of the stage. It wasn't a long walk, but every step looked heavy, like the moment was weighing her down. People who were there later described the atmosphere as ice cold. The kind of situation where everyone could feel something had gone wrong, but no one dared react.
She's going around causing trouble, looking for a mic. Where is the mic with that absolutely manic smile on her face?
Her exit didn't look planned, and the audience could tell. But what happened next raised even more eyebrows. By the next morning, that tense silence from the stage had almost vanished from major coverage. Instead of showing the full, unfiltered moment, polished images and carefully selected shots started popping up everywhere. In those photos, Meghan looked confident and smiling. Harry stood beside her, calm and composed, both appearing completely in sync to anyone casually scrolling. Nothing seemed off at all. The tension, gone. The silence, invisible. What actually happened on that stage seemed quietly edited out. In its place came clean visuals and smooth headlines, making everything look perfectly coordinated, like nothing strange ever happened. But if it looked like nothing happened on the surface, the internet had completely different plans. Short clips started popping up all over social media, showing the raw moment exactly as it went down. Meghan stepping forward, the crowd freezing instantly, Harry holding onto the microphone and continuing his speech without passing it over. Those clips didn't just spread, they exploded, pulling in millions of views within hours.
Outsiders are revealing to me the true story of how Meghan Markle failed.
The contrast was impossible to miss. On television, everything looked smooth, controlled, perfectly put together. But online, the unedited footage told a much more uncomfortable story. Critics wasted no time calling out major outlets, accusing them of protecting Meghan's image and softening what could have been a damaging public moment. Supporters fired back just as quickly, arguing that the silence was being blown out of proportion and that people were reading way too much into small gestures and body language. Still, one thing became obvious. Two completely different versions of the same moment were now out there. One version lived on TV, polished and carefully framed. The other spread rapidly across social media, raw and unfiltered, where nothing had been cleaned up. And that split didn't feel random. Coverage of high-profile figures is often carefully managed, but this time it didn't just smooth things over, it almost flipped the entire narrative. That raised a bigger question people couldn't ignore. If one moment could be reshaped that quickly, how many other moments had been quietly adjusted before anyone even noticed? The more people looked into it, the clearer one idea started to take shape. This wasn't just about one interrupted speech anymore. It started to look like a fight over who really controls the story. What happened on that stage didn't just feel like a simple interruption, it hit people like something deeper was slipping through the cracks. For a long time, the public had seen Harry as the one who steps back, the one who makes space so Meghan can take the spotlight.
Harry and Meghan specifically told media at the time of Archie's birth that they didn't want to give him a title.
What?
Because they wanted him to live a life as normal as possible. Cut to Oprah Winfrey interview where Meghan sits down and accuses the palace of not giving her son a title because of his skin color. That was so damaging for the royal family at the time.
But apparently for me, that doesn't.
That image showed up again and again at events, almost like a pattern everyone got used to. But in that moment, in front of thousands of eyes, that pattern broke. Harry didn't step aside. He stayed exactly where he was and kept speaking. To some watching, that small move didn't feel small at all. It looked like a clear line being drawn, a quiet signal that something in their dynamic might be shifting right in public view. At the same time, Harry's position only adds more confusion to everything. Officially, he stepped away from certain royal duties, yet at major events he's still introduced as Prince Harry, carrying a level of respect usually tied to active members of the royal circle. That mix creates a strange middle ground that's hard to ignore. He's not fully inside that world anymore, but he's not completely out either. And standing beside him, Meghan often comes across as someone trying to hold on to a space that doesn't fully open up to her anymore. That contrast leaves people watching closely, trying to figure out what's really going on behind the scenes. Some insiders even suggest that keeping Harry's role slightly unclear actually works in favor of the institution. Recognition shows up when it's useful, and distance appears when it's not. That balance keeps attention locked in and headlines constantly moving. Whether people support them or criticize them, they stay right at the center of the conversation. And that moment on stage, it only made the tension more visible than ever.
I truly believe that when he met Meghan, she whispered into his ear, a 36-year-old mature woman whispered into his ear, "Harry, you and I could change the world."
Harry pushing back, even in such a subtle way, instantly raised bigger questions. People started whispering, was he finally choosing his own direction? Or was he simply done stepping aside and letting someone else take control of the spotlight? In the end, it matters either way. The cracks people once ignored are getting harder to hide behind polished photos and perfect smiles. Because the biggest tensions don't usually play out over microphones or speeches. They happen privately, behind closed doors. Sources close to the couple claim the real disagreements run deeper than what the public sees. Harry is said to want his children to experience parts of the tradition he grew up with. One idea that keeps coming up is Eton, the well-known British school attended by generations of high-profile figures. He's reportedly imagined Archie walking those same historic halls one day. For Harry, it's not just about education, it's about heritage, history, and staying connected to a life he once knew before everything shifted. But Meghan is said to see things very differently. According to insiders, she prefers raising the children in California, far from the structure and pressure tied to royal traditions. And the disagreement doesn't stop at location. It reportedly goes much further than that. Some sources claim that conversations about British schooling have been shut down unless certain conditions are met. As one insider put it, appropriate concessions would need to be made first. Those concessions could involve finances, security arrangements, or long-term guarantees that reshape how decisions are made. To outside observers, this doesn't look like a simple parenting discussion. It comes across as something more intense, a quiet power struggle playing out behind the scenes, where every decision carries bigger meaning than it seems on the surface.
He came from this very busy world of the royal family with lots to do. Even in his spare time, he could play polo and do whatever he wanted. He sat in Montecito, twiddling his thumbs, thinking, what do I do next? What is my role? Where is my work?
This issue has started to represent something bigger, the balance of power inside their relationship. Many believe Meghan often takes the lead when it comes to major private decisions, steering the family's direction with strong determination. Meanwhile, Harry, who once appeared comfortable going along with that flow, is now rumored to be pushing back more than before. Friends reportedly describe him as increasingly frustrated, caught between loyalty to the life he has now and a deep connection to the past he grew up in. That internal conflict doesn't just fade, it builds quietly over time. The irony stands out. Their children have become the center of a much larger clash, tradition versus independence, history versus personal freedom. And while the audience that night only saw a quick moment with a microphone, people familiar with the couple say the real tension is unfolding far from any cameras. But that night wasn't over yet, and it didn't get any lighter. Meghan's unexpected step onto the stage may have caught everyone off guard, but what happened afterward felt even more telling. Event organizers quietly adjusted the seating for the rest of the evening. Instead of staying front and center, where attention naturally falls, Meghan was guided to a seat that kept her visible, but noticeably off to the side, close enough to be seen, yet far enough to show she wasn't the main focus anymore. No announcement was made, but the message came through loud and clear. Her position had shifted, and visually, it only added to the tension. Observers pointed out her designer gown, clearly chosen to stand out, suddenly looked different under the harsh stage lighting. Online reactions came in fast, with commentators analyzing every detail. Some described her expression as tense, while others said her smile looked stiff and carefully controlled. Meanwhile, Harry moved through the room with ease, chatting with guests and shaking hands like everything was completely normal. There was no sign of hesitation. He stayed engaged, relaxed, and fully part of the flow of the evening. Meghan, on the other hand, spent most of her time seated. She clapped when expected, but rarely seemed pulled into the conversations happening around her.
There's Harry telling her to back off. You see his hand here, below his big face, pointing at her, telling her to stay back.
For someone usually positioned at the center of attention, that quiet distance stood out, and it landed hard. Critics didn't miss a thing. Every small detail became a talking point. The forced laughter, the stiff posture, even the way her jewelry caught the camera lights. Online reactions picked everything apart. To some viewers, this didn't feel like the confident spotlight moments seen before. It looked more like a faded version of that same presence. Supporters tried to frame it differently, calling it an oversight or just awkward event planning. But people who were actually in the room reportedly saw it another way. According to witnesses, the shift didn't feel random at all. It was quiet, subtle, but impossible to ignore. For the first time, Meghan didn't just seem overlooked. She seemed deliberately moved to the side. As the night went on, it became clear the crowd wasn't stepping in to shift the energy back toward her. Attention had already moved on, and the mood in the room stayed noticeably cool and distant. But beyond what people could see, something bigger appeared to be unfolding behind the scenes. While Meghan dealt with the uncomfortable optics of the night, the palace seemed to be operating on an entirely different level. Within hours, headlines started appearing, and they didn't match up. Some reports gave Harry the same level of respect typically reserved for a senior royal figure, keeping his image strong and steady despite everything that had just happened. Some outlets introduced him with full titles and formal language, treating him with all the respect of a senior royal figure. Others pushed the complete opposite story, describing him as someone who had fully stepped away from royal privilege. That sharp contrast didn't feel like sloppy reporting. It looked intentional. Many observers believe there's a strategy behind it. By keeping Harry's role unclear, the palace keeps people guessing non-stop. Every appearance turns into a question. Will he be treated like royalty or like someone on the outside looking in? That uncertainty keeps debates alive, drives headlines, and keeps both of them tied to royal conversations whether they want that attention or not. In this complicated setup, Meghan's presence becomes both an advantage and a challenge. On one hand, she brings global attention and massive public interest. On the other, her polarizing image means even the smallest awkward moment can explode into major headlines. Some critics believe the institution has adjusted its approach after past controversies. Instead of cutting ties completely, they appear to keep the couple right on the edge of relevance, close enough to draw attention, but far enough to avoid real influence. That kind of positioning feels calculated, and some compare it to how other royal-adjacent figures have been handled before. Not fully inside the circle, but never entirely pushed out either. For Meghan, that unclear position can feel incredibly frustrating. Every public appearance gets dissected, every rumor spreads at high speed, and every small detail turns into a talking point. For Harry, the pressure hits differently. It's like standing between two worlds, never fully separated from the past, but not completely welcomed back either. That tension doesn't fade. It follows him into every room, every event, and every headline that keeps the story alive. Together, they seem caught in a strange cycle where institutions and media narratives feed off constant drama, while their public image shifts little by little under an intense spotlight. And if that moment on stage wasn't already uncomfortable enough, what followed pushed their already fragile dynamic into even more risky territory. What started as a routine speech quickly turned into something people are still breaking down piece by piece. Meghan stepping onto that stage wasn't just unexpected, it exposed something deeper. The heavy silence from the crowd, Harry refusing to hand over the microphone, and how fast the moment seemed to vanish from major coverage all pointed to something bigger unfolding behind the scenes. For those watching closely, it revealed cracks that were never meant to be seen in public. Because if the tension looked that real in front of cameras and a full audience, it naturally raises questions about what things might look like in private. And according to whispers, Circulating among observers, the story doesn't end with that moment on stage. In fact, many believe it may have marked the beginning of a much larger shift in how their relationship is viewed. But that's only part of what's going on. There's another twist tied to Meghan's family situation that reportedly caught Harry completely off guard. The details surprised even longtime royal watchers and added a whole new layer to the conversation surrounding them. If that stage moment felt intense, what comes next goes even further. And it connects directly to everything you've just heard. Once the pieces start coming together, the reaction from people says it all. If you want the full picture, keep watching, because the next part breaks down what happened next and why it caught so many people off guard.